The coronavirus pandemic is not just a health crisis, but an economic one as well. The International Labour Organization says that 22 million full-time jobs have been lost on the continent between April and June this year. So how is Africa coping? Who are the casualties? What options do they have? And are there new opportunities amidst the financial meltdown? This is The Breakdown, BBC Africa's COVID-19 special program, helping you make sense of the crisis. My name is Sharon Mashira. Now, the global hospitality industry is expected to shed up to 100 million jobs in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. But let's take a closer look at Africa. Air travel departures dropped by 94% during the first 4 months of this year, leading to the loss of at least 3.1 million jobs. African airlines are in dire need of an estimated $10 billion in order to revive the travel and tourism sector. The industry's revenue losses have so far hit $6 billion. In the skies, though, things are beginning to look up. Tanzania has lifted the ban on commercial flights, while Ghana has opened the airspace to domestic flights. Senegal as well has issued an $128 million loan to support her tourism and aviation sector. Here's a broader look at the impact of COVID-19 on Africa's job market.
1 in every 6 young people around the world are no longer working ever since the coronavirus pandemic began. And for those who are paid by the hour, countries with strong testing and tracing have cut working hours by as much as half. Wage and salary employees are about 15% of Africa's labor force. Informal sector employment, on the other hand, makes up for over 70% of hours worked in Africa. The informal sector makes money for at least 60% of Africans. From kiosks to informal processing like milling grains to hairdressing, the day-to-day household incomes have also been strained. As is the case with every crisis, there's always winners and losers. Some are very clear. A motorbike taxi driver in Uganda, for example, who used to earn about $2 a day, has had no work since the government banned public transport last month as part of measures to slow the spread of coronavirus. For basics such as food, the lockdowns and restrictions in movement have been a huge hindrance. Around the world, 75% of independent restaurants have been closed. Most of the money that would have been spent in restaurants is now going to grocery stores. Hospitality is another sector. 3.1 million people could lose their jobs in aviation and related industries, with these countries being the hardest hit. A country like Cabo Verde, with a population of under 1 million people, has 46,000 jobs at risk. Another gainer is warehousing and delivery. Global retailer Amazon, for example, does both warehousing and delivery and hopes to hire 100,000 new workers during the pandemic. And in the digital world, prospects are looking up, with video-on-demand entertainment site Netflix announcing 141 new jobs worldwide in the first week of April. Across Africa, millions of people rely on the digital space to find gigs. A growing trend is microjobs, where people get paid to complete market research, training, or surveys online. Anything from $1 to $20 is paid per job.
Now let's dig deeper into the impact that COVID-19 has had on different industries. Here's Ronak Gopaldas. He's a South African economist. What do you think has been the impact broadly on, of job losses on the African continent?
So look, making any predictions in this context is a bit of a fool's game. We know that the situation is evolving quite rapidly. It's very dynamic. What's worth doing is referencing a recent report by McKinsey, who estimated that a third of all jobs are at risk in an African continent. Some of the major industries like manufacturing, like tourism, like aviation, almost half the jobs are at risk. Same applies to the informal sector, where about a third of the jobs are under pressure. Very few countries, maybe South Africa and Mauritius, are able to support their populace in the most vulnerable of societies with these kind of social safety nets. Governments don't have the resources. They're turning to external funding sources, which leaves the continent extremely vulnerable in this context.
How long do you think this could last?
This year is not going according to script at all. If you look at the kind of sequence of events from, social distancing and lockdowns now to protest actions in the past couple of weeks, it's difficult to predict when it will end because we don't have a vaccine yet and we have no indication around when that's going to happen. So you're facing a kind of a governance crisis in politics, in economics, and in healthcare, and achieving that balance is now the focus for most governments across the continent and across the world.
Thank you, Ronak, for those insights. Now, the disruption in the job market has been catastrophic. Gender analysts are now beginning to notice that there could be further imbalance during the pandemic, despite decades of activism to ensure gender parity at the workplace.
Life is a little weird right now. Time is moving. Except for many, life is on a standstill.
Nolu Sindise-Shilegu from South Africa has been teaching English in South Korea until she recently lost her job.
While some of us may not be physically sick, we are sick. Sick of uncertainty, sick of worrying. We are worried about the security of our jobs and finances.
She basically said, unfortunately, yes, we're gonna have to let you go. We have no choice. I think I wanted to cry at that point because I realized that I was in financial ruins. I had not been working for an entire month. Rent is absolutely expensive in Korea, and I'd been buying groceries out of my savings, and I was basically running out of money. And I just sat there for a while, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say. And she looked at me and asked if there was anything that she could do to help. I honestly just wanted to say, you could just give me my job back. But I realized that obviously they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise they wouldn't have told me that they were letting me go.
Nolu's situation is pointed to another dynamic that may not be too obvious just yet. A recent study by Citi Inc., based in the United States, showed that women are disproportionately affected by job losses. Out of a total of 44 million people working in sectors that are more prone to job cuts, 31 million of them are women. That means for every one unemployed man, there's 2 unemployed women. The study further shows that $1 trillion more could be lost as female workers fall out of the workforce during this pandemic. Some people have actually termed it the pink collar recession. So why are women the hardest hit? Here's 4 reasons why. Number 1, women outnumber men in the sectors that have been hardest hit by COVID-19. That includes hospitality, travel, education, and retail. Number 2, women form the larger majority of the informal sector at 74%. And when you work in the grey economy, as it's sometimes called, you're barely protected by labor laws, social benefits, insurance, or even paid leave. Number 3, existing gender pay gaps that further exacerbate inequality and frustrate women to leave their jobs. Number 4, with the closure of schools, more women are likely to carry the increased demands of caregiving, and not just for their children, but for the growing number of ill family members. But women have taken center stage in the fight against COVID-19 because they make up 88% of personal care workers and 69% of health professionals. So the question begs, is COVID-19 undoing some of the gains made in the fight for gender equality in the job market? Well, here's Olimata Sarr, an expert on gender issues. Olimata, are women actually disproportionately affected? And does this ring true here in Africa?
Absolutely. Women are more affected than men during this COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at our markets, you will find women as early as 5 a.m. So you can imagine with the confinement, with the restriction of movement, women who are in the informal sector are not able to go about their business and therefore are not able to generate revenue for their families.
Right. And what do you think are the sort of measures that need to be put in place to ensure that gender equity is observed during this pandemic and even beyond?
I think we summarize it in the 3 R's. It's about rights, it's about representation, and it's about resources. And I will emphasize on the resources because you see that a lot of countries in Africa right now are talking about debt relief. Some have launched some kind of a relief fund. And if you look at all those relief funds, they seem to be talking to the organized private sector. If you are a trader in a market in Dakar or in Nairobi, if you don't belong to a larger group, if they decide today to give funding to the organized, associations of traders, You will not receive anything because you are completely informal. We want the women to be part of the response.
So, how do you think women can cope in order to position themselves strategically so that they can brave these unprecedented times in the job market?
I'll share with you some very successful examples. In Senegal, the women have started One Senegalese, One Mask. Because, of course, when the COVID-19 started, we're not making dresses anymore. And today, the women of Senegal who started the One Senegalese, One Mask have produced over 350,000 masks. We placed our first order with them. Some of them were just masks that we donated, reusable masks that were donated to vulnerable groups.
Thank you so much for that. It was lovely chatting. So we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll bring you the harrowing reality of being jobless and how scammers are preying on job hunters. Welcome back to The Breakdown, BBC Africa's COVID-19 special program, helping you make sense of the crisis. Now, quarantines, lockdowns, and social distancing continue to slow down sectors that heavily rely on human interaction. These are industries like hospitality, entertainment, and small and medium enterprises that have laid off staff and scaled down their operations altogether.
I lost my job on the 30th of April, 2020.
Since the closure of the public entertainment areas, all of us had to shut down our businesses.
We don't know when the next paycheck is going to come from, whether projects that we had lined up pre-corona are still going to be there when normalcy or some sort of normalcy comes to be.
I had to kind of send me on unpaid leave.
We haven't been working almost the rest of April now. It means there's no business. Other companies are closed. Our clients are not doing business. So we know what that means for salaries, for operating expenses. We're concerned about this month's salaries, the next month's salaries.
Some businesses have been shut down. People have lost their jobs. I'm a victim as well. You can see I'm working from home, as you can see.
At first, it was a bit difficult to just take in that aspect of being jobless. The main problem when you lose your job is that consistent income.
At that time, when they underpaid us, I could not understand. But now, in the long run, I feel like, it's a bit unfair, but it had to be done.
The relief for companies has not yet come out, and if that is not available, companies that have already been struggling are shutting down, and companies may be difficult for them to start all over again.
I've been doing a bit of writing and some digital marketing projects, Okay, I'm not making so much, but I think, but at least the amount I can make is enough to sustain me during this time.
Don't know what's going to happen after the pandemic, so maybe there'll be loss of business or an increment.
So for me, I have put myself out there to try new things, to look for new opportunities, and just think positive and having an attitude that attracts opportunity.
So I'm really hoping the government will listen to our cries and people who cannot be able to talk for themselves, so that we can bring things to normal.
In the midst of the despair, scammers are cashing in on desperate job seekers. The mental and emotional stress has left many people vulnerable as they turn to the internet to search for jobs and post applications.
Fake job alerts and job scams have always been there, just that there are more now. Now, with companies laying off their employees, job hunting is at an all-time high. The Google 2020 job search trends actually reveal just how dire the situation is. In Kenya, for instance, the search for public service job hit a 5,000% increase, and this was about mid-March when the government announced the first case of COVID-19 in the country. In Nigeria, the search terms working from home jobs hit 300% increase, and its highest hit was actually towards the end of March when the government announced lockdowns in a number of states. And in South Africa, many have been searching for how to apply for unemployment grants and a relief fund, both of them hitting a 5,000% increase during the lockdown. Now, as you can imagine, the reality of losing a job and also the uncertainty of trying to get a new one while keeping safe during the pandemic is definitely taking a toll on job seekers.
So the economic outlook is not great, and that has a detrimental effect, not just on the young person's ability to want to search for jobs, but certainly on their mental health capacity.
One thing to also note is that scammers are aware of this. So the question is, how can job applicants keep themselves safe?
The first one is just to verify the authenticity of the entity or the organization in question by checking their address. The second thing is to get a third-party opinion, someone who can assist you in verifying and authenticating the organization. Could be a family member. And then the third thing is just to get some email confirmation from the entity with their company letterhead, which will confirm the address and the contact number of the organization.
Now, to help us further understand the African job market in the wake of COVID-19, here's Natalia Polishchuk, an executive headhunter. So, Natalia, how badly off has the pandemic affected the job market?
When we look at the demographics, we see that up to 75% of all Africans are under the age of 25. So really the employment population is much, much smaller. When we look at countries like Nigeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, they get a lot of their, especially Nigeria, up to 76% of their GDP from oil. So when we look at other countries where the industry is more diversified, you will see that the work is impacted less. But if we were to look at sort of winning and losing industries, we can immediately see that, for example, tourism, and airlines and maritime kind of has a huge impact. Egypt has lost 80% of their booking. Madagascar has less than 300,000 tourists that were coming are no longer there. Rwanda has made a $14 million loss just in the tourism. So when we, on the other hand, look at industries like ICT and internet, we look at e-commerce, we are now far more purchasing than the jobs are coming up. So it's really looking at a variety of how is sort of COVID impacting our daily life and how we work. The most impacted of people, I think, are what I would say African women. When you look at, for example, Kenya, and the flower economy, where up to 45 planes have been flying on a daily basis to Netherlands, this has been halted. Over 100,000 women who are literally have been made kind of redundant. So it can be quite scary when we are looking at some of the current situations.
In your opinion, how does the future of work look like? And what skills do you think will give job seekers a competitive edge?
The kind of jobs that are kind of going out are jobs that need sort of humans to manage it, even drivers, for example, or anything that is automated. So just because some jobs are being removed does not mean they're being eliminated. New jobs are being created. And as long as you can educate yourself in the right technology and what is moving the most, you can potentially work for any company anywhere in the world.
I love that, Natalia. Online becomes global. So how long do you think, in your opinion, that the African job market will take to bounce back?
Let's look at it also this way, in that Africa as an economy has not historically depended on employment, if that makes sense. There is a huge mentality of, I'm going to grow something, sell something. So there's a lot of self-independence from that point of view. Even now, as a headhunting agency across Africa, in last month, we've issued about 9 different offer letters, and we are working on a substantial amount of headcount. So whilst businesses might be a little bit cautious, there's still a lot of recruitment going on.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Natalia. That was really invaluable insight. So away from job applications, scores of people who have lost their jobs in businesses in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, have found an ingenious way of survival. They call it the COVID hustle. Lawyers, beauticians, taxi drivers are all turning their cars into mini markets to help them ride through the pandemic.
I used to work printing company initially before COVID kicked in. We never thought we would get to this point whereby we would find ourselves jobless, nothing to do, and sitting at the house. First and foremost, there is no source of income. People have to pay for rent, people have to pay for loans. If by any chance you have a kid at home, you're paying for virtual education, bills are just popping in, waiting for you to do everything. So that's when me and my friends decided to come down and come up with an idea until the economy resumes back to normalcy. We were passing through here. We saw people had parked their cars, selling fruits, selling foodstuffs, selling everything. And that's why we saw it as an opportunity. We can come and park on this other side. But then people are not so many. So we found ourselves in this parking spot and decided to start selling fruits. And so far so good. There's every sort of car, 4x4s, everything. People are now coming out of their comfort zones.
I had come home for a long holiday for about 75 days before Corona. Then all of a sudden, Corona came and pushed me to venture into this business, at least to get some income to help the family and to avoid being idle.
And with little to no income coming in for scores of people who've just turned jobless, the pressure to pay rent has pushed many out of their homes for cheaper houses. But in Nigeria, where city residents ordinarily pay up to 2 years of deposit before moving into a new house, how are the jobless coping?
These are difficult times for many Nigerians financially. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, 42% of working Nigerians lost their jobs due to the economic fallout of COVID-19. Many people took pay cuts, while others who have jobs are not even sure of what to come in the coming months. But one of the most difficult things to deal with at a time like this is shelter.
My rent will be due this July. If I had saved up for the rent, now it has to be diverted to so many other things. So I could say that I'm not so sure about how to sort that out. I intend to do maybe 6 months first, if that's possible, because I know I'm supposed to pay a year full. I have some relatives in Abuja. I might need to relocate, and I have some things I'm trying to start up around here. So I don't know. The issue is the uncertainty.
Personal finance expert Oluwatosin Olasinde from Nigeria now tells us what to do after losing your job amidst a slowing economy and tips to help you survive the pandemic.
COVID is a reminder of what retirement could look like. What will happen? Do I have an emergency fund? Am I saving or investing enough? People are beginning to ask themselves this question. So right now, we don't know how long this is going to go on for. If it's going to go on for the next 3 months, or if it's going to go on for the next 6 months, we do not know. So what do? We play a defensive game. So when you're building up your budget, we're trying to cut off as much fat as possible. So that way we have a budget whereas we're covering our essentials and things that we just need, right? And we're saving for a rainy day. That's basically the other next way in order for us to survive a pandemic. Number one, we keep the tap open. Number two, we play a defensive strategy with our budget and we're spending on and prioritizing our essentials. The last but not the least is to what? Stay positive and we'll all get through this. Thank you.
So every week we sample a few questions asked by audiences across different BBC platforms and we put them to Dr. Rina Shah, who's treating COVID-19 patients in East Africa. So here we go. We have Aruna Samai, who asks, does Africa have a different strain of coronavirus?
There are studies looking at strains or genetics of the virus that will tell us whether African strain is any different from anywhere in the world. Currently, we do not know.
Amos Mwanga asks, people who have HIV and people that are aged over 60, are they more vulnerable to COVID-19?
From studies and epidemiological data from countries that have had huge COVID outbreaks, we know that the elderly are more likely to get COVID and more likely to get severe forms of the COVID-19 disease. Whether that's to do with their immune system or the strain or what are the other factors, we're still not sure yet.
And Korbla Akapabile asks, is there any research that backs only prayers as a solution to coronavirus?
There is no research that backs prayers as the only form of recovery from COVID or prevention from COVID. Having said that, it's always good to have faith that if you do get the disease, that you will be healed and do well. But you have to go and seek medical care.
Well, that's all the time we had for you on the program. But remember to get in touch with us using the social media info on your screen. My name is Sharon Mashira. You can catch me on Twitter at Sharon Mashira as well. We leave you with this video of a couple in Kenya who tied the knot amidst tough COVID-19 restrictions. Until next time, stay safe and remember to sanitize.
Our wedding was planned way before the COVID issue came. And we had organized a very big day because we had 2,500 people who were supposed to attend. Some even think that my lady is pregnant. That's why we are rushing, of which is not the case. There are people who are not even talking to us because the expectations were not met. Remember, the government only wanted us to have 15 people, which we strictly adhere to that because we don't want now we finish our wedding, then you are sent to quarantine. You can imagine now having your honeymoon at quarantine, how things would look like.